at last, after the disasters of last time, I am actually in here with Jay Fisher, who's better known to you and I as Apple Rabbits. Thanks ever so much for joining us. This evening, in particular, we're talking about the release of Kilburn State, which was the album that came out March time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was March, although it feels, yes, it's been around a while, but it came out, we released it in March, although it does feel like about 200 years ago.
And the thing that we've been discussing in the other room, which is something that people wouldn't have been privy to, but the one thing that is amazing about this album, and something that certainly I've been talking about when it's been on Crawling Home, is that it's a real album in the sort of genuinely the old sense of the thing. It's something you have to listen from start to finish. What was the process when you were doing this? Because I know from reading your sort of little blurb that Kilburn State came as a product of when you were working on the album before King of Anglia in 2008. So it's been something that's been sort of in mind for a while.
Well, it's kind of because I was in a sort of electronic band called Canteen, and we used to remix everything. And I have this thing of rewriting everything. And this was meant to be a kind of remix of King of Anglia, but it just ended up really, really quickly. I think Aeroplane was the first track, and I sort of did it in order as well. And as soon as I'd done Aeroplane, I thought, no, this is. I want to do an album like this.
Okay. Well, I can just let me think. Okay, so it's not super crucial that I get it exactly in time, exactly in the right place. It's called CE Airport. Okay, yeah, ours is called, yeah, you mean the thing that are on the plugs?
Kilburn State was a product of King of Anglia. Naturally, are you giving yourself a break from this now, or do you have an idea of where you're going to be taking Apple Rabbits now? What's the next step?
I've got a whole album already. It's kind of demoed, but some of it's finished, some bits of it are finished and some of it is demoed, which I've been working on for a while now. No, I haven't been working. I've sort of left it. I've sort of abandoned it again. I keep abandoning it. I'm not sure where Apple Rabbit's going. But I did a project just after I finished this one called, it was J.B. Presley. And I felt that was where Apple Rabbits were heading. But I can never be definitely sure about where anything's going ever, so it's probably really stupid of me to even try to tell you.
Did you actively think when you were putting together Kilburn State, actually I'm going to put one song on there which will be like the lead or the single?
Yeah, well, because I'd finished this album and it didn't have I Could Not Care Less or Yeah on there. And it was just as it was with those two missing. And we went in to mix it, and I'd done a couple of demos at the studio down in Swindon that I was working at with Doug Wolfson. And I'd done these two demos which I quite liked. And he'd kind of forgotten about them because he was in a mood with me that weekend. And I said, do you remember those two tracks we did ages ago? I quite liked them. And so then we finished them off. I was just meant to be there for mixing. We finished off the tracks and then bunged them on. But I knew that I kind of felt that it needed something. I think I thought that I might need to put something on there that might appeal to people who weren't just into sort of something droning on for 2 hours, which there's a lot of that on here, you know. So, yeah.
You mix a lot of different styles and a lot of different methods, and one of the things that really sort of impresses me, and even more so now from speaking with you, is that a lot of the process of you producing the sound is through the old style of doing it. It isn't just, you know, cutting and pasting something. You're a craftsperson.
Yeah, well, because I find things that are done too easily sound like they're done too easily. I find them a bit boring. It's kind of too throwaway. I'd much rather have kind of slaved for 2 hours recording things onto a 4-track and onto a little tape machine, and then recorded the sound of the room in order to get that sound, and then reversing it and whatever it was I did, and then playing it through a comb and paper or whatever, because it has a richer sound. And that's really all it's about. I mean, it's just about it having a sound that gets you in the chest, rather than something that sort of passes through you and doesn't make you feel anything at all. I mean, that is really it. It's just to get a rich sound that makes me feel and all happy.
You see, I like that, and you know, so you'll score points with Jordan on that as well, because the one word that you didn't use, and I'm always told off for using it, is the sonic, you know, the sonic experience. But you saying there's that sound in your chest, yeah, that really is what it's about. And I think for people who are listening to it and give it the time to actually sort of listen through the whole thing, they'll experience that. Is there sort of an underlying message in it that you feel that you've managed to achieve, or is it sort of an eclectic mix of all those things that make you or make Apple Rabbits?
I don't know. There isn't a message as such. I have nothing to pass on to the young people of the world, except don't end up like me.
But it is quite interesting that you're quite modest in the sense it's a complicated album to listen to, not in the sense that it's unapproachable, it's just that there's a lot of things that are going on there. I don't think somebody who hasn't necessarily thought about the whole sort of structure of the album would sort of think about all of those things and all the underlying things.
I started off wanting to be being a sort of painter artist type, and I did that for a little while, and I was useless at it, because I couldn't tell anyone what it was I was doing. And that's such a big part of it. And I sort of went off into it. I was doing music for a long time, but music I found a lot easier, because you don't really have to, you can make the noises. And if you can't explain yourself, it doesn't really matter as long as the noise sounds okay. And so when I listen to this, I do listen to this and think, well, you didn't do that, did you? It's kind of like you sort of make things that are just sort of much smarter and much better at explaining themselves than you are. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it sounds sort of pretentious, but I have no way of explaining this.
And I think actually that is probably one of the most sort of perfect ways of actually being able to describe anything that is good, because the problem is so much of art is about justification, as you say. I would actually say that knowing that you've come from an art background actually does sort of explain the way that you, because it is like building on a canvas, this particular album. It's like you've started with something, but then there's so many different sort of little additions and things like that. Yeah, there's too much pretense within all of art, and
because I don't talk when I'm doing it, I'm just sort of sitting there, and I don't even know what I look like when I'm doing it. I might look very, very odd when I might be a funny shape or something, you know, and so I'm so completely engrossed in whatever it is. I'm not sort of self-conscious or any of the sort of tiresome things that I am as a sort of human being out in the rest of the world. So I'm not self-conscious. I'm not holding back on what I really need to say. I'm not trying to find the right words to say. I'm just being just a monster in the room.